Hey everyone, it's D7 from D13 Airsoft giving you another Airsoft gun review, and this one is the EMG Colt License M4 SOPMOD Block 2 AEG rifle with Daniel Defense Rail System, model 12-inch M4A1. Because why not make the title longer? I think you can squeeze a couple more words in that title. Alright, joking aside, I bought this gun about 2.5 years ago, and since then it has been my go-to airsoft rifle for any game. A little bit about EMG. Now, E-Vike's been around for quite a while, and EMG stands for E-Vike Manufacturing Group. Past several years, EMG has been a sub-company to E-Vike, partnering with a lot of other airsoft companies, assembling airsoft guns, and to making a pretty unique setup. A lot of them are very customized, and a lot of them have an incredible amount of performance for a certain price tag. Now for this one, but this one's claim to fame outside of some pretty standard but good quality parts that make it a very good gun, is the Colt licensing on the lower receiver, where you got the pony on it, and then the Daniel Defense License rail, which is actually a pretty good designed rail, even in the airsoft form. Another detail about EMG is because they're using a lot of different parts, and because King's Arms are the ones who's actually licensing the Colt name to it, this probably has a lot of Taiwanese parts, but unfortunately also probably a lot of mainland Chinese parts, also known as West Taiwan. Hey Winnie the Pooh, how you doing? Now, with that said, I personally have a shtick with that with mainland China, but a lot of people listening probably don't, so throw out the last minute or so of video. Now moving on to specs. The weight of this airsoft gun is 3,000 grams, which is American for saying chunky, especially in the rail system. Outside of that, the barrel itself isn't like a real steel barrel. If it was like an actual AR-15 with a heavier barrel, it would probably be pretty close to an actual weight, but of course it's not, so you can still tell it being a little more lightweight, but you're still looking at 7 pounds or so for the whole thing. The inner barrel is 363 millimeters, with the outer barrel is 12.5 inches, which is kind of confusing actually, because it's the 12-inch model and the handguard's 12.25 inches. So what's the 12 inches for? E-Vike, come on. All right, FPS is labeled at 370 to 400 FPS. In practicality, I tend to use 0.28 gram BBs. I know E-Vike usually tests their guns with 0.20. For me, I'm usually looking around the 350 to 375 range, with joules being right around 1.5, though it can sometimes be lower. So for most fields, it's usually semi-only. Sometimes it's a safe kill, but usually no automatic fire, and definitely not much fire within 20 feet. But for fields in the United States, that's right there in the middle where a lot of rifleman classes are, so perfectly acceptable. 14 millimeter negative thread on the end of the barrel, standard for the industry, and that's great because it can fit a lot of different compatible parts. What's also great about it is out of the box it comes with DIN connectors, which is where a lot of the industry is pushing for better quality batteries and connection. So I think that's really cool to see. I will say the range on this is around 220 feet, which is actually slightly above average what you see in the airsoft industry at 200 feet. So really awesome to see, and it definitely does give you a little extra edge on other players out on the field. Now starting down here at the buttstock, the default one that it comes with is kind of your standard crane stock with that easy to fall off butt plate. I don't like that type of butt plate. It falls off too many times. Now your battery's just dangling in there. So I got the Crytek stock, which is much better. And this particular stock, I've never had issues with this gun. Another gun, I had the same battery issue once over several years. So definitely a good stock, and I highly recommend it. Going on to the buffer tube. Now, what happens often for a lot of these M4 style airsoft guns is the screw inside of it tends to get loose with wear and tear. For this one, every 6 months or so it tends to happen, at which point you have to get a long Phillips head screwdriver and just tighten the screw down, and you'll be fine. In addition, the ring at the end of the tube that I've taped over, that tends to get pretty loose. Even on airsoft guns, a lot of time they like to stake them so that they don't come loose. This one, I don't think they did, and you can definitely tell. I have to hand tighten it every so often. So eventually what I did is just hand tighten it really tightly and then do some tape over it just to keep it from becoming an issue. Moving on to the charging handle. This was a big no-go. Out of the box, it came broken. Pulled it back the first time, found the charging handle was split in two, and then the spring just came out in a blundering, disgusting mess. I had to friggin' tear apart the gun pretty early on to get to it and just tear the guts out. And I was... first impressions are important, and as much as I love the performance in this gun, that was a big red flag for me pretty quickly, especially the price tag I got for this. The iron sights that they come with are absolute dog poop. They are the cheapest plastic you've ever seen, and with them both being foldable sights, they're just asking to be broken. Get rid of them, and if e-bike's listening, completely replace them with better iron sights if you're going to put any on here at all. I would say until you find good ones, stop putting them in the box to begin with. I replaced them with my own sights here. Optics, I got an EOTech and a magnifier. Use it for real still. Stick it on the airsoft gun when I want to. That's just personal preference, but it works good with this combination, especially with this being a slightly shorter barrel at 12.5 inches. So kind of unique setup and really nice balance with that length. Now going on to another issue was the selector switch. So once again, almost out of the box. I would say before I ever got to use that in a real game, just messing with it inside of a house in the garage, just test firing it, I realized, hey, that selector switch is pretty darn loose. So loose that it's starting to flip into a full 180. So I had to take apart the upper, take the gearbox out of the lower receiver, and then just tighten that screw and then reassemble everything. Again, big red flag when I first got the gun. Thankfully, it's seen better horizons since then, but again, that's not something I like to see. Now flipping it back around, another issue was the mag release screw. I mentioned on my KWA review, this EMG is no different. It also came with a piece of junk hexagonal screw with a very tiny head size, just asking to be stripped the very second you use it to try and unscrew it to disassemble and get inside the gearbox. So once again, the very second I eventually did have to go in the gearbox, I immediately replaced it with an aftermarket one that included a Phillips head and a completely new mag release system that is compatible with it. Mag compatibility is pretty good, definitely better than the KWA I reviewed prior. You know, it does have some tightness of other ones. I'm not a guy who has 30 different brands out here, so guys can comment in the video which magazines are compatible with this and not, but generally speaking, they're probably going to fit this in some way, shape, or form, though some of them might be a little tight. Now moving on from there, again, the Daniel Defense license rail is awesome. It is free float. It is a bit heavy, but it is an awesome constructed design. It doesn't use garbage hexagonal screws. It doesn't use Phillips head. It actually has Loctite bolts on the side around a locking nut that is attached to the upper receiver. So really well designed. No surprise if it's a copy of the Daniel Defense designs. I really like it. I also really like the length. I mentioned it before, but again, 12.5 inches with the rail being 12.25. Really cool design. Now, I mentioned it before, but this thing has had a lifespan of 2.5 years. May I remind you, I just did a KWA SR10 review with a lifespan of 10 years without having a catastrophic failure until the very end. For this one, I recently did have an issue with it, where the selector switch was not going on semi-automatic anymore. Kind of a deal breaker for a lot of fields that I go to. So what I did is I went to Jake at Southfield Airsoft, shout out to him. He got the part replaced inside the gearbox that was having issues. One of the metal selector levers had completely rounded off over use. I tend to be a selector switch hog. I constantly switch it back to safety and semi whenever I'm not using it, so probably part of the reason why that happened so early on within this thing's lifespan. But it got repaired for me along as a good gearbox cleaning, and got this thing up and running again. So hopefully this will last me for several more years. I tend to use it for several more years. But what that means is technically after 2.5 years, this thing did have a type of catastrophic failure that would have been a big deal for any normal player. So is 2.5 years good for longitude for an airsoft gun? Depends who you're talking to. For a lot of players, especially early on in the airsoft careers, they probably tend to go through a lot of guns pretty fast. For me, again, I had a KWA that lasted me 10 years, and in a way it still is lasting me. So for me, it is on the lower side of durability. So I would say, hey, put it somewhere in the middle and say it has average size durability for an airsoft gun, especially within this price range within the airsoft industry. So overall, I have definitely nitpicked this gun. I've made some changes, though almost all external outside that one repair. I still like it a lot. I think the rail system, the barrel link is fantastic. I think the licensing is kind of a gimmick. I don't care about that, but the design is good. I like the magazines it comes with. The EMG magazines I have here, you can get them pre-made in multicam, and they can hold a good 200, 250 BBs, which is a pretty decent amount for a mid-cap magazine. The Crytek stock's done a good job. I like the optics setup. I mean, it is close to real steel spec, at least as much as an airsoft gun can be. So generally, yes, I absolutely do like it. At the price tag of $350, really good. You can get different versions as high as $500, though those come in different packages, including pre-built optic setups, battery packs, chargers, etc. EMG is very good at producing a lot of package setups and variations for their guns. So, in conclusion, would I recommend this gun? Well, I'm going to give you two answers. And the first one is no, I wouldn't recommend it. And it's because this charging handle came broken out of the box. I paid $350 for this thing, and I should not have anything breaking out of this out of the box or for a decent amount of time of using it, in my opinion. So I'm not going to recommend something that came broken out of the box to you guys. But that's my own self-imposed rule. So here comes the second answer. If I didn't impose that rule on myself, would I recommend it? Well, with the caveats of some of the durability issues I've shown up to this point, I would say yeah, I think within $350, it is competitive to other guns out there on the market. In addition, EMG is probably not going to disappear anytime soon. They use a lot of compatible parts of other guns in industry. So when it comes to customer service or dealing with any problems or tech issues, the company itself will probably take care of you. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you around next time.